Hello there. Welcome to this learning session about ITIL Service Transition. The Service Transition module is one of the ITIL Service Lifecycle modules. It will be of interest to professionals who are preparing for a career in IT service management. Introduction. Course Agenda. This interactive e-learning program, with its structured course cover, will help in better understanding of the fundamentals and implementation of service transition. Certification Roadmap. This slide depicts the ITIL qualification structure. The tiered structure of the qualification offers candidates the choice to complement career goals by focusing their studies on key areas of interest. ITIL Framework. ITIL is a framework, providing best practice guidelines, on all aspects of end-to-end service management. It covers complete spectrum of people, processes, products and use of partners. It provides a framework for the governance of IT, and focuses on the continual measurement and improvement of the quality of IT service delivered. Service Transition. The ITIL service lifecycle is depicted on the slide, provides an overview of the lifecycle stages described in the ITIL core. Each one addresses capabilities having direct impact on a service provider's performance. The core is expected to provide structure, stability and strength to service management capabilities. Module 1, Introduction to Service Transition. Service Management. IT service management refers to the implementation and management of quality IT services that meet the needs of the business. IT service management is generally concerned with the back office or operational concerns of information technology management. The act of transforming resources into valuable services is at the core of service management. Service, value proposition. Services are a means of delivering value to customers by facilitating the outcomes customers want to achieve without the ownership of specific costs and risks. Services enhances the performance of associated tasks, and reduces the effect of constraints. While some services enhance performance of tasks, others have a more direct impact, they perform the task itself. Service, functions. A function is a team or group of people and the tools or other resources used to carry out one or more processes or activities. A function may be broken out and performed by several departments, teams and groups. Or, it may be embodied within a single organizational unit. Service, process. Processes define actions, dependencies and sequence. A process is organized around a set of objectives. Well-defined processes can improve productivity within and across organizations and functions. A pictorial representation of the process shown in the slide for reference. Process characteristics include measurability. It is possible to measure the process in a relevant manner. It is performance-driven. Managers want to measure cost, quality and other variables, while practitioners are concerned with duration and productivity. Specific results. The reason a process exists is to deliver a specific result. This result must be individually identifiable and countable. Customers. Every process delivers its primary results to a customer or stakeholder. Customers may be internal or external to the organization, but the process must meet their expectations. Responsiveness to specific triggers. While a process may be ongoing or iterative, it should be traceable to a specific trigger. Service, roles. A role is a set of responsibilities, activities and authorities granted to a person or team. A role is defined in a process or function. One person or team may have multiple roles, for example, the roles of configuration manager and change manager may be carried out by a single person. Fundamentals, purpose. The purpose of the service transition is to ensure that new, Modified or retired services meet the expectations of the business as documented in the service strategy and service design stages of the life cycle. The objectives of service transition are listed on the slide. Fundamentals, goal. The goals of service transition are to set customer expectations on performance, enable the business change project or customer, reduce variations in the predicted and actual performance, reduce the known errors and minimize the risks, ensure that the service can be used in accordance with the requirements and constraints. Fundamentals, objective. In order to achieve these objectives, there are many things that need to happen during the service transition lifecycle stage. These include planning and managing the capacity and resources required to manage service transitions, implementing a rigorous framework for evaluating service capabilities, establishing and maintaining the integrity of service assets, providing efficient repeatable mechanisms for building, testing and deploying services and releases. Scope. The scope focuses on how to ensure that the requirements from service strategy, developed in service design, are effectively realized in service operation, while controlling the risks of failure and subsequent disruption. Scope. Above diagram shows all of the processes described in ITIL service transition. Processes that are largely within the service transition stage of the service lifecycle are shown within the central rectangle. The other stages of the service lifecycle that come before and after these processes are shown in the smaller darker rectangles. Processes include processes that support the service lifecycle, processes within service transition. Inputs. Inputs from service strategy influence the overall approach, structures and constraints that apply to service transitions. Outputs include updated service package or service bundle that defines the end-to-end service offered to customers, updated service portfolio and service catalog, updated contract portfolio, documentation for a transferred or decommissioned service. Value to business. The value of a service can be considered to be the level to which that service meets a customer's expectations. Service transition adds value to the business by improving the ability to adapt quickly to new requirements and market developments. Value to business. Effective service transition can significantly improve ability to handle high volumes of change. Service transition enables the service provider to align new or changed service with customers' requirements. Module 2, Service Transition Principles. Key concepts. Service transition is supported by underlying principles that evolve from service strategy considerations. These principles center around understanding service, and how service delivers value to the business. Utility and warranty. Utility is the functionality offered by a product or service to meet a particular need. Utility can be summarized as what the service knows. It can be used to determine whether a service is able to meet its required outcomes, or, is it fit for purpose. Warranty is an assurance that a product or service will meet its agreed requirements. Warranty refers to the ability of a service to be available when needed, to provide the required capacity, and required reliability. Warranty can be summarized as how the service is delivered, and can be used to determine whether a service is fit for use. Resource and capabilities. There are two types of asset used by both service providers and customers: resources and capabilities. Resources are direct inputs for production. Capabilities represent an organization's ability to coordinate, control and deploy resources to produce value. Key policies. All service changes must be managed by the service transition lifecycle stage. The scope of service change must be documented. This scope should include all changes to the service portfolio or service catalog. Also, It should normally exclude business process changes and some minor operational changes. Best practice. The definition of a change is clearly explained. Internal and external changes are differentiated. Changes are justified through the development of a clear business case. Changes to services are defined in a service design package. Implement all changes to services through service transition. There should be a single focal point for changes to supported services, to minimize the probability of conflicting changes and potential disruption. All standard changes, normal changes and emergency changes must follow policy, principles and processes defined by service transition. Implement all changes to services through service transition. Best practice. Implement industry best practice as the basis of standardization to enable integration across the supply chain. Ensure that processes are adopted consistently by scheduling regular reviews and audits of the service management processes. Adopt a common framework and standards. Provide a framework for establishing consistent processes for assuring and evaluating the service capability and risk profile before and after a release is deployed. Adopt a common framework and standards. Best practice. Publish standards and best practices for service transition. Provide a framework for establishing consistent processes. Maximize reuse of established processes and systems. Develop reusable standard service transition models to build up experience and confidence in the service transition activities. Reuse established processes and systems wherever possible. Capture data and information from the original source to reduce errors and aid efficiency. Maximize reuse of established processes and systems. Best practice. Integrate the service transition processes into the overall service management system. Design service transition models that enable easy customization to suit specific circumstances. Align service transition plans with the business needs. Align service transition plans and new or changed service with the customer and business organization's requirements in order to maximize value delivered by the change. Align service transition plans with the business needs. Set customer and user expectations during transition as to how the new or changed service can be used effectively to enable business change. Provide information and establish processes to enable business change projects and customers to integrate a release into their business processes and services. Establish and maintain relationships with stakeholders. Set stakeholder expectations on how the performance and use of the new or changed service can be used to enable business change. Provide good quality knowledge and information so that stakeholders can find information about the service transition easily. Establish and maintain relationships with stakeholders. Stakeholders should verify that the new or changed service can be used in accordance with the requirements and constraints specified within the service requirements. Establish effective controls and disciplines. Establish suitable controls and disciplines throughout the service lifecycle to enable the smooth transition of service changes and releases. Establish effective controls and disciplines. Ensure that roles and responsibilities are well defined, maintained and understood by those involved and are mapped to any relevant processes for current and foreseen circumstances. Assign people to each role and maintain the assignment in the service knowledge management system. Implement integrated incident, problem, change, service asset and configuration management processes with service level management. Establish effective controls and disciplines. Ensure that the service can be managed, operated and supported in accordance with the requirements and constraints specified within the service design by the service provider organization. Ensure that only competent staff can implement changes to controlled test environments and supported services. Establish effective controls and disciplines. Establish effective controls and disciplines. Ensure that roles and responsibilities are well defined, maintained and understood by those involved and are mapped to any relevant processes for current and foreseen circumstances. Assign people to each role and maintain the assignment in the service knowledge management system. Implement integrated incident, problem, change, service asset and configuration management processes with service level management. Provide systems for knowledge transfer and decision support. Service transition develops systems and processes to transfer knowledge for effective operation of the service and enable decisions to be made at the right time by competent decision makers. Provide systems for knowledge transfer and decision support. Provide quality data, information and knowledge at the right time to the right people to reduce effort spent waiting for decisions and consequent delays. Ensure that there is adequate training and knowledge transfer to users to maximize the business value created by the new or changed service. Plan release and deployment packages. Release packages are planned and designed to be built, tested, delivered, distributed and deployed into the live environment in a manner that provides the agreed levels of traceability, in a cost-effective and efficient way. Plan release and deployment packages. After each transition is complete, publish a summary of the predicted and unpredicted effects of the change and deviations of actual from predicted capability and performance together with the risk profile. Anticipate and manage course corrections. Train staff to recognize the need for course corrections and empower them to apply necessary variations within prescribed and understood limits. Anticipate and manage course corrections. Encourage stakeholders to expect changes to plans and understand that these are necessary and beneficial. Manage course corrections through appropriate change management, project management and baseline procedures. Proactively manage resources across service transitions. Policy. Provide and manage shared and specialist resources across service transition activities to eliminate delays. Proactively manage resources across service transitions. Recognize and use competent and specialist resources outside the core ITSM team to deliver service transition. Proactively manage shared resources to minimize the impact that delays in one transition have on another transition. Ensure early involvement in the service lifecycle policy. Use a range of techniques to maximize fault detection early in the service lifecycle in order to reduce the cost of rectification. Identify changes that will not deliver the expected benefits, and either change the service requirements, or stop the change before resources are wasted. Ensure early involvement in the service lifecycle. Involve customers or customer representatives in service acceptance test planning, and test design. Use previous experience to identify errors in the service design. Use a formal evaluation of the service design and internal audits to establish whether the risks of progressing are acceptable. Assure the quality of the new or changed service. Service transition is responsible for assuring that the proposed changes to the operational services can be delivered according to the agreements, specifications and plans within agreed confidence levels. Assure the quality of the new or changed service. Understand the business value that the service helps to create, and the quality criteria for the business processes and products that may be affected by the new or changed service. Comprehensive stakeholder involvement is important both for effective testing and for building stakeholder confidence, and so should be visible across the stakeholder community. Assure the quality of the new or changed service. Understand the differences between the build, test and live environments in order to manage any differences and improve the ability to predict a service's behavior. Proactively improve quality during service transition. Policy. Proactively plan and improve the quality of the new or changed service during transition. Module 3, service transition processes. Transition planning and support, purpose. Plan appropriate capacity and resources to package a release, provide support for the service transition teams and people, plan the changes required in a manner that ensures the integrity of all identified customer assets, service assets. Transition planning and support. Plan and coordinate the resources to ensure that the requirements of service strategy encoded in service design and effectively realized in service operation. Transition planning and support. Objectives. The objectives of transition planning and support are to ensure that all parties adopt the common framework of standard reusable processes, provide clear and comprehensive plans that enable customer and business change projects to align their activities with the service transition plans. Scope. The goals of transition planning and support are incorporating design and operation requirements into the transition plans, managing and operating transition planning and support activities, maintaining and integrating service transition plans. Managing service transition progress, changes, issues, risks and deviations. Value to business. Effective transition planning and support can significantly improve a service provider's ability to handle high volumes of change and releases across its customer base. An integrated approach to planning improves the alignment of the service transition plans with the customer, supplier and business change project plans. The release policy should be defined for one or more services and include unique identification, numbering and naming conventions, roles and responsibilities at each stage, expected frequency for each type of release. Approach for accepting and grouping changes into a release. Release policy. A release that consists of many different types of service assets. The typical responsibilities for handover and acceptance of a release should be defined. The main roles and responsibilities at points of handover should be defined. Release types. There are 3 release types: major releases, minor releases and emergency releases. The service transition strategy. The service transition strategy defines the overall approach to organizing service transition and allocating resources. The organization should decide the most appropriate approach to service transition based on the size and nature of the services. The aspects to consider are purpose, goals, and objectives. Context. Scope. Organizations and stakeholders involved in transition. Framework for service transition. Criteria. Aspects to be considered during transition strategy are identification of requirements and content of the new or changed service, people, approach, deliverables from transition activities, schedule of milestones, financial requirements. SDP should define the lifecycle stages for a ST. SDP should define the lifecycle stages for the service transition, and the move from one stage to the next should be subject to formal checks. Typical stages in the life of a transition might include acquire and test new configuration items, SIS, and components. Build and test. Service release test. Service operational readiness test. Deployment. Early life support. Review and close service transition. Service transition preparation activities include review and acceptance of inputs from the other service lifecycle stages. Review and check the input deliverables. Checking transition readiness. Planning and coordinating service transition. Each service transition plan should be developed from a proven service transition model wherever possible. A service transition plan describes the tasks and activities required to release and deploy a release into the test environments and into production. Service transition process support, advice. Service transition should provide support for all stakeholders to enable them to understand and follow the service transition framework. Administration, transition planning and support should provide administration for managing service transition changes, issues and support. Progress monitoring and reporting, service transition activities should be monitored against the intentions set out in the transition model and plan. ST, triggers, inputs, and outputs. Trigger, the trigger for planning a single transition is an authorized change. Inputs, the inputs to transition planning and support are, change proposal, authorized change, service design package. Outputs, the outputs from transition planning and support are, transition strategy and budget, integrated set of service transition plans. KPIs, each organization should develop KPIs that are appropriate for its level of maturity. Achievement against KPIs should be monitored and used to identify opportunities for improvement. Change management. Changes are made for a variety of reasons and in different ways. Service change is the addition, modification or removal of authorized, planned or supported service or service component and its associated documentation. Purpose. The purpose of the change management process is to control the lifecycle of all changes, enabling beneficial changes to be made with minimum disruption to IT services. Goal. The goals of change management are to respond to the customer's changing business requirements while maximizing value and reducing incidents, disruption and rework. Respond to the business and IT requests for change that will align the services with the business needs. Objective. The objectives are to ensure that the changes are recorded, evaluated, authorized, prioritized, planned, tested, implemented, documented and reviewed in a controlled manner. Scope. The scope of change management covers changes to baseline service assets and configuration items across the whole service lifecycle. The figure shows a typical scope for the service change management process for an IT department. Value to business. Change management enables the service provider to add value to the business by considerable cost saving and efficiencies to be gained from well-structured and planned changes and releases. This is in addition to the values listed on the slide. Top 5 risk indicators of poor change management are unauthorized changes, unplanned outages, a low change success rate, a high number of emergency changes, delayed project implementations. Policies. Policies that support change management include, creating a culture of change management across the organization where there is zero tolerance for unauthorized change, aligning the service change management process with business, project and stakeholder change management processes, prioritization of change, establishing accountability and responsibilities for changes through the service lifecycle, segregation of duty controls, Policies. Establishing a single focal point for changes. Preventing people who are not authorized to make a change from having access to the production environment. Integration with other service management processes to establish traceability of change, change windows, enforcement and authorization for exceptions, performance and risk evaluation of all changes that impact service capability. Requirements and design for the change management processes. The change management process should be planned in conjunction with release and deployment management and service asset and configuration management. This helps the service provider to evaluate the impact of the change on the current and planned services and releases. Change request. A change request is a formal communication seeking an alteration to one or more configuration items. This could take several forms, example a request for change document, service desk call or project initiation document. Different types of change may require different types of change request. Change process model. A process model is a way of predefining the steps that should be taken to handle a process in an agreed way. Organizations will find it helpful to predefine change process models, and apply them to appropriate changes when they occur. Standard changes, pre-authorized. A standard change is a change to a service or infrastructure for which the approach is pre-authorized by change management that has an accepted and established procedure to provide a specific change requirement. Crucial elements of a standard change. The crucial elements of a standard change are that there is a defined trigger to initiate the RFC, the tasks are well known, documented and proven, authority is effectively given in advance, budgetary approval will typically be preordained or within the control of the change requester, the risk is usually low, and always well understood. Remediation planning. Remediation may require revisiting of the change itself in the event of failure. Only by considering what remediation options are available before instigating a change, can the risk of the proposed change be determined and the appropriate decisions taken. Change management activities. Change management activities include planning and controlling changes, change and release scheduling, communications, change decision making and change authorization, ensuring there are remediation plans, measurement and control, management reporting, understanding the impact of change, continual improvement. Change management. The figure depicted in the slide shows process flow for a normal change. Normal change procedure. Create and record requests for change, change logging, review the request for change, assess and evaluate the change, authorizing the change, coordinating change implementation, review and close change record. 7 R's of change management include: who raised the change? What is the reason for the change? What is the return required from the change? What are the risks involved in the change? What resources are required to deliver the change? Who is responsible for the build, test and implementation of the change? What is the relationship between this change and other changes? Change authorization model. The figure above depicts the example of a change authorization model. Change Advisory Board. The Change Advisory Board, CAB, is a body that exists to support the authorization of changes and to assist change management in the assessment and prioritization of changes. Emergency change. The number of emergency changes proposed should be kept to an absolute minimum, because they are generally more disruptive and prone to failure. Emergency changes are sometimes required and should be designed carefully and tested before use. Triggers. Requests for change can be triggered throughout the service lifecycle and at the interfaces with other organizations. They can be suppliers, customers or stakeholders. Typical triggers include: strategic changes, change to one or more services, operational change, changes to deliver continual improvement. Inputs. The inputs include policy and strategies for change and release, request for change, change proposal, service package, release package. Outputs. Outputs from the process will be rejected RFCs, approved RFCs, change schedule, revised PSO, authorized change plans, change decisions and actions, change documents and records, change management reports. The image on the slide depicts the request for change workflow and key interfaces to configuration management. Key performance indicators. All KPIs should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-bound. The key performance indicators for change management are: The number of changes implemented to services which met the customer's agreed requirements, reduction in the number of disruptions to services, reduction in the number of unauthorized changes, reduction in the backlog of change requests. Service Asset and Configuration Management. Service Asset and Configuration Management, SACM, Purpose. The purpose of SACM is to, identify, control, record, report, audit and verify service assets and configuration items, account for, manage and protect the integrity of service assets and configuration items, protect the integrity of service assets and configuration items, ensure the integrity of the assets and configurations required to control the services. Goal. The goals of configuration management are to, support the business and customers' control objectives and requirements, provide accurate configuration information to enable people to make decisions at the right time, minimize the number of quality and compliance issues, optimize the service assets, IT configurations, capabilities and resources. Scope. Asset management covers service assets across the whole service lifecycle. It provides a complete inventory of assets and who is responsible for their control. The scope covers interfaces to internal and external service providers where there are assets and configuration items that need to be controlled. Value to business. Improves the overall service performance and optimizes the costs and risks caused by poorly managed assets. SACM provides visibility of accurate representations of a service. Policies. SACM policies set the objectives, scope and principles and critical success factors, CSFs, for what is to be achieved by the process. The policies will be based on the organization's business drivers, contractual and service management requirements. Principles. Typical principles include ensuring that asset and configuration management operations costs and resources are commensurate with the potential risks to the services. The requirement for clear economic and performance criteria for interventions that reduce costs. The level of control and requirements for traceability and auditability. Integration of asset and configuration management with other processes. The image on the slide depicts example of a logical configuration model. The image on the slide depicts example of a configuration management system. Secure libraries and secure stores. The Definitive Media Library. The Definitive Media Library, DML, is the secure library in which the definitive authorized versions of all media are stored and protected. It stores master copies of versions that have passed quality assurance checks. Configuration Baseline. A configuration baseline is the configuration of a service, product or infrastructure that has been formally reviewed and agreed. Snapshot. A snapshot of the current state of a configuration item or an environment. This snapshot is recorded in the CMS and remains as a fixed historical record. Sometimes this is referred to a footprint. The image on the slide depicts typical configuration management activity model. Management and planning. Level of configuration management is required for the selected service. The plan will contain scope, requirements, policies, standard and organization for configuration management, planning for service assets and configuration management tools. Identification. Identification. It is important to, define how the classes and types of assets and configuration items are to be selected, grouped, classified and defined. Define the approach to identification, uniquely naming and labeling all the assets or service components. Define the roles and responsibilities of the owner or custodian for configuration item type at each stage of its life cycle. Configuration control. Configuration control ensures that there are adequate control mechanisms over SIS while maintaining a record of changes to SIS, versions, location and custodianship or ownership. Identification. Define how the classes and types of assets and configuration items are to be selected. Define the approach to identification, uniquely naming and labeling all the assets or service components. Define the roles and responsibilities of the owner or custodian for configuration item type at each stage of its life cycle. Status accounting and reporting. Configuration status accounting and reporting is concerned with ensuring that all configuration data and documentation is recorded as each asset or SIP progresses through its life cycle. Status reporting provides the current and historical data concerned with each SIS that in turn enables tracking of changes to SIS and their records. Verification and audit. The activities include a series of reviews or audits to ensure there is conformity between the documented baselines and the actual business environment to which they refer. Verify the physical existence of SIS in the organization. Check that release and configuration documentation is present before making a release. Process relationships. SACM supports and interfaces with every other process and activity to some degree. Some of the more noteworthy interfaces are change management, identifying the impact of proposed changes, financial management, capturing key financial information such as cost, depreciation methods, owner and user, incident/problem/error, providing and maintaining key diagnostic information, maintenance and provision of data to the service desk, availability management and detection of points of failure. Key performance indicators. Assets identified as the cause of service failures. Improve speed for incident management to identify faulty SIS and restore service. Impact of incidents and errors affecting particular SIS types. Percentage reuse and redistribution of underutilized resources and assets. Degree of alignment of insurance premiums with business needs. Ratio of used licenses against paid for licenses. Average cost per user for licenses. Improved audit compliance. Challenges. Challenges to SACM include persuading technical support staff to adopt a checking in, out policy. Attracting and justifying funding for SACM, since it is typically out of sight to the customer units empowered with funding control. An attitude of just collecting data because it is possible to do. Lack of commitment and support from management who do not understand the key role it must play supporting other processes. Critical success factors. Focusing on establishing valid justification for collecting and maintaining data at the agreed level of detail. Demonstrating a top-down approach, focused on identifying services and subsequently the SIS that support those services. Setting a justified level of accuracy, i.e. the correlation between the logical model within SACM and the real world. Making use of enabling technology to automate the CMS practices and enforce SACM policies. Risks. Risks to successful SACM include, technically focused, rather than service and business focused, since technical competence is essential to its successful delivery. Degradation of the accuracy of configuration information over time that can cause errors and be difficult and costly to correct. The CMS becomes out of date due to the movement of hardware assets by non-authorized staff.